Hello friends and welcome to Sustainable Prepping, your home for fear-free emergency preparedness and a sustainable life. My name is Brecky and today I am going to be bringing you 5 more skills that you should look into if you are interested in building a sustainable and prepared lifestyle. If you're new here, I want to say a great big welcome. So glad you found my slice of the internet. And if you're not new, I want to say welcome back. Friends, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon so you never miss any of my videos coming up on the channel. And if you find this video useful or any of my videos useful, please feel free to send them to a friend or share them to your social media platforms. They help me spread the word about fear-free preparedness for everybody. So today I'm bringing you 5 more skills that I think folks in the sustainability community should look into developing in order to be more prepared for emergencies. These are also generally great skills to look into, to learn, or maybe to have different members of a community learn so everybody knows a little bit of something. Getting really proficient at a few of these would take a lot of time and investment, and you might not be able to do that, particularly not right away. But you may choose in a family setting or a small kind of mutual assistance group setting to pick a few of these, everybody pick something and then learn and develop that skill, getting the tools needed for the skill so that your whole community has access to these skills in the event of some kind of emergency or crisis. All right, the first skill that I think that would be so helpful that folks in the sustainability community might actually already have access to, either knowing the skill or knowing people who have this skill, and that is solar power hookup and use. Solar panels have become more and more affordable, and folks like myself have small scale solar generators, but being able to hook up larger scale solar arrays, being able to get the most bang for your buck does take some skill and know-how. Going ahead and practicing that skill, knowing that skill, and perhaps investing to have one member of your family or community know that skill really, really well so they can maintain solar panels, fix things, know how to move with the sun to get the most into your generators as possible, or to refill your battery banks. There's a lot of detail, and if you're not familiar, can be a little bit off-putting and has a bit of a learning curve. Practicing those skills, honing those skills now will serve you in the event of a crisis when there is no electricity. You'll be able to harness the power of the sun, or you do wind generation, you could do water hydroelectric generation. I'm using solar because it's a little bit more accessible, but you could apply this out to other green technologies. Having access to that certainly is a useful skill for any community to have, particularly as you are preparing for those future disasters. The second skill that I think every community should have, every person should cultivate, or at least in a small family unit or MAG community, and that should be sewing skills and tailoring. Clothes are going to get torn, they are going to have blemishes, buttons will get pulled off in the times of crisis where you might have things that get ruined and have to be patched up pretty significantly. Not just having basic stitching a tiny tear or sewing on a button skills, but slightly more advanced, different kinds of stitches that can reinforce a piece of fabric, or hemming a pair of pants, or tailoring something in that's too big, or letting something out that's too small. Having some of these sort of entry level, slightly above entry level sewing skills can really take you a long way. You never know when you are going to have to mend a pair of jeans because it's the last pair that you have. You never know when you might need to mend, clothing for children, letting things get longer because you don't have access to clothes for a while. You never know when those skills are going to come in handy. So practicing now, using this sort of downtime to practice some of your sewing skills, or to find someone in your community that can learn to sew, and to both learn to sew with a sewing machine and without a sewing machine, just in case you don't have access to power for your sewing machine, is a really useful skill. Personally, and don't come for me in the comments for this, but I think it's more important to learn the skill of sewing, like hand sewing, than it is to learn skills like knitting or crocheting. Those have their place, and you can certainly learn to knit and crochet many useful items, but they are not going to help you if the clothing you already have gets torn or ruined. They can't actually mend those things. Even darning a sock takes particular tools that are different than general knitting and crocheting. So if you're looking to pick up a handcraft, if you're looking to invest in one kind of handy, creative, cloth-based fiber art, my suggestion is to learn to do hand sewing, hand stitching. You can do it through embroidery, that can be one of the practices, but learning to hand stitch so that you can repair torn seams, ripped buttons, do a little bit of hem maintenance is going to take you a long way for a short investment of skill set and time. My third recommendation is one that everybody has been recommending. It's one that you might already be doing, and that is to learn to garden. Whether or not you decide to maintain a large garden with raised beds, whether or not you decide to try to garden to help feed a percentage of your family from that garden, it's an important skill to practice, even if you practice it in a really small way. If you don't have a lot of space, learning to apartment garden with herbs or salad greens means you have something fresh coming in. You can even learn to use microgreens, so gardening with microgreens or sprouting. This is going to give you access to fresh vegetables, to fresh nutrients. And if you're eating a lot of rice and beans in your pantry because there's not a lot of food, having that little bit of injection of vitamins and minerals is going to help your body as far as health, and it's going to help your mind, soul, and spirit as far as taste and variety. Learning to garden too means that when there is that big steep learning curve, you are learning it when you have access to a grocery store. You are learning it when your life literally doesn't depend upon it. Gardening is way harder than just sticking seeds in the ground and watering them and watching them grow. You're going to have to learn your environment. You're going to have to learn your weather patterns. You're going to have to learn your soil. You're going to have to learn your harvesting seasons, what you can reasonably manage on the time that you have. You don't want to put so much in and then have it all go to waste, right? Be rotted. These are all things you're going to have to learn, and you're going to have to practice. Managing pests and managing blight are all issues that you need to know ahead of time when you're not dependent upon that food coming in for you and your family. But knowing that now, practicing now before you need it is a key, because there's a lot of growing curves, no pun intended. My fourth recommendation is one that, again, like gardening, is one that you can learn just a little bit and get by, but the more deep you go, the more benefit you have, and that is basic construction. Now, this is one that I know I don't have as a skill, and there's so many different ways you could take basic construction. Do I mean building shelters and learning how to use saws and measure and cut and nail and hammer and whatever? Yes. But I also mean things like basic electrical work and basic plumbing. These are all things that I know I don't have as a skill, and are all things that to be really proficient at takes a lot of time and practice. So it might not be something that one person can do all of this, but again, in a community that is working together, you may have somebody who is interested naturally in construction or already has a background and can teach a few other people a little bit so that they have some general knowledge. It's good to have a little bit of construction skill so that you can patch damages in your home after a storm, so that you can not have to rely on an outside person every time you want to build, for example, a chicken coop, or you want to figure out how to unclog a toilet or fix, a clogged sink. Learning a few of these basic tools is useful financially today, but it's also going to help you when there aren't the plumbers and the electricians that you can just call in the event of a grid down situation. If you know how to at least render a electrical socket, dead, so it's not putting electricity out, or make it safe, or install it. Can you tell that this is not my area of expertise? It's definitely not my area of expertise, and it's a skill I know that I and my family need to work on. Having these skills under your belt before the emergency means that you're going to have more confidence dealing with when things break, and they will break. There will be damage to property, there will be shutdowns, there will be things that get backed up. Any of this will happen when there is a crisis. So having some of those skills that you can practice now, you can practice while you watch a tutorial on YouTube, or maybe you ask a friend or a local electrician if you can pay them for an hour of showing you how to walk through stuff. Figuring out some of that stuff now is going to be useful. Knowing what tools you need to really make a difference is going to be useful. So working on construction skills now is another skill I suggest everybody, but particularly folks who are looking to have a more sustainable lifestyle as well as a preparedness lifestyle, gain and work on. My fifth and final recommendation is one that most preppers will put in their top 5, and that is learning how to do basic first aid and treat basic illnesses. Now, this is one that I think everybody, regardless of whether or not you care about emergency preparedness, everybody should know how to deal with cuts and bruises and stings and basic fevers, basic, bodily illnesses. How do you do a home remedy for a cold at home without OTCs? These sorts of things are things we should all know to be functional adult humans in the world. If you don't know that you need to take Tylenol to reduce a fever, then I don't know what to say. If you don't know the Rice method of elevation, compression, ice, raising like that to deal with sprains and things, then you need to practice that and know that. You need to know that you have the ACE bandage to wrap around a sprain. You need to know how to properly cleanse a wound when you're putting a Band-Aid on it so you don't get an infection. You need to know how to deal with a minor infection at home. You need to deal with minor aches, pains, colds, flus, things like that at home. So that if you can't just pop over to the drugstore and you can't just pop over to your doctor, you have some of those skills. It's not that you're necessarily going to avoid treatment. I am not recommending that you avoid medical treatment, but rather that you practice some basic first aid, some basic wilderness survival, some basic home remedies, and you know how to use them and you start implementing them now before you need to, because you don't want to have a learning curve when someone in your house is sick and you're worried. So implementing some of those practices now, both first aid and home remedies, is a great skill and set of skills to start honing in this pre-crisis time. Now with all of these, you could go really, really deep. You could go super deep with construction, electricity, and plumbing. You could go super deep with home remedies by becoming an herbalist and growing your own herbs and really integrating that into your life. You could go super deep with gardening and become a full-on homesteader. You can go super deep with solar and alternative energies, right? All of these different skills could have a depth to them. You could become a seamstress and get yourself a treadle machine. These are all things that you could go super deep with, but I am not recommending that level of depth. What I am recommending is a surface level appreciation of kind of those basic skills that can float you by in a crisis. And if one of them really piques your interest, maybe you go deep with it. Or maybe in your community, you have a couple of people who pick one skill and go deep with it so that you're bringing a lot of skills to the table at the end of the day. In all things, my recommendation is that you learn a little bit so that you're well-rounded and that you have many skills in your toolkit, as it were, to respond to any crisis that you might face. You might not be able to learn all of these. I know I'm not proficient at solar, green energy, or any kind of building and construction. Those are areas I am sorely lacking. But I know that, and that's something that is on my list of skills to work on as I live in a more urban environment and have more access to Skillshare programs and a little bit more time. Those are things that are on my to-do list. So knowing that you have skills that you can work on is also part of the battle. My friends, comment down below and let me know, what skills would you add to my growing skills list for folks in the sustainability community who would like to get more into preparedness? What skills have you been working on? Are there skills where you're learning the basics, or are you going really, really deep with just one or two things? I'd love to know how you're approaching this skills-based ideas of preparedness. I hope you guys are all doing well. Don't forget you can find me on Instagram and in the Facebook group. All those links are down in the description, as well as a link to my course, The Ultimate Food Storage in a Weekend. This helps you get 1 month of emergency food storage planned, organized, and prepared in just 1 weekend or less if you've got the time. This is a great way, if you are new to preparedness, to have a fear-free approach to real food that you can buy at the grocery store this weekend and have that meal plan and all of that food prepped for you and your family so you can be calm and confident in any crisis, which is what we're all here for. Hope you guys are all doing well, and until the next video, happy prepping.